Now maybe, just maybe, something good is about to happen for the American truck driver. We hear all the time from politicians and anybody else who wants to speak on the topic about how important, what a vital role, what an instrumental player the American truck driver is to the American economy. People say that if truck drivers quit en masse, that the American economy would come to a screeching halt. Well, if this is the case, and I believe it is, I think truck drivers are essential when it comes to the American economy. But if that's the case, why aren't truck drivers compensated based on how important they are to our economy? Did you know that truck drivers don't get paid overtime? They don't get paid much at all for their time. So why is this the case? And should it be changed? Well, a group of lawmakers led by Representative Andy Levin certainly thinks so. They have introduced a new bill called the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act that would allow for truckers to be fairly compensated for their time. So in this video today, we're going to talk about this new bill and how it could change the landscape of trucking and make sure that every truck driver gets paid fairly for his time. Truck driver compensation, or truck drivers being fairly compensated for their time, is not a new conversation at all. This has been something that has been going on for a very long period of time, but there has not been a solid resolution that has come to the table to solve this issue. Why is that? Why haven't we been able to find a resolution to an issue that doesn't seem like it's very hard to solve? Well, I think it's because of how the truck driving industry is structured. You have lots of small truck driving companies. I think 90% of the trucking industry is based on small trucking companies, comprised of small trucking companies, I should say. And when you have small trucking companies and there are no unions, then there's no cohesion, there's no unity, and people take advantage of that. And they don't pay truck drivers what they should be paid. They don't pay them according to their value. They pay them what they want to pay them. They pay them so that they can put more money in their pocket. So in order to make sure we're on the same sheet of music, to make sure you understand where I'm coming from, I want to paint you a picture to give you some idea of what I mean when I say truck drivers are not fairly compensated for their time. Let's say a truck driver picked up a load and he drove 11 hours to the facility to drop that load. Once he got to the drop facility, let's say that he's waiting, because that very well could happen. He could wait 3, 4, 5 hours before he's downloaded, and sometimes it can be longer than that. So here it is, a driver has driven for 11 hours and he's still on the clock 4 or 5 hours, and he's not compensated for the time that he's waiting. Yes, sometimes shippers will pay detention pay, but detention pay is so small, it doesn't mean very much. Drivers don't get excited about getting detention pay. Now, of course, there are some shippers that don't even pay detention pay because there's not a requirement that you pay detention. Some shippers pay it and some shippers don't. And if shippers see that you have a clause in your contract that says you are due a certain amount of detention, then if they don't want to pay that, they'll move on to another driver. So it's not required that they pay you for your time. And that's the problem. Now, how do we get here? How do we even get to the point where you can say to yourself that it seems like it's fair, it seems like it's okay to not pay a driver for his time? How do you even come to that conclusion? Well, it's called a piece of legislation called the FLSA, and that's a Fair Labor Standards Act. And that was first implemented to make sure that drivers didn't drive too many hours. But also, it also said that you weren't going to get paid any overtime pay. So that exemption caused the whole problem that we have with overtime pay right now. So the idea is to say, oh, we have to repeal the FLSA and put in place the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act so that truckers can now be paid like they're supposed to be paid. Not like you're doing anything or doing any favor for truck drivers. You're just doing what you're supposed to do. And that's paying truck drivers according to the value that they bring to the economy. Let's take a look at how the drivers associations are responding to the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act. Here's what the OOIDA, and that's the Owner Operators Independent Drivers Association CEO Todd Spencer had to say. He says that we know that for too long, too many people throughout the supply chain have placed little or no value on a driver's time. He said this is partly because of the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, overtime exemption. He says that shippers, receivers, and carriers have never been forced to account for all the hours that they keep drivers waiting, since it costs them nothing to do so. Since they don't have to pay for it, they just keep you waiting. They don't ever address that issue, he says. He says by repealing the FLSA exemption, this bill would help make sure that drivers are compensated for all of the hours they work. We thank Representative Levin for finally standing up for truckers on this issue. Now, to me, this bill, guaranteeing overtime to Truckers Act, is a no-brainer. It just passes a common sense test that you would pay a driver for all of the time that he works and not just some of it. At the end of the day, we understand right now it's just a bill. In order for a bill to become law, it has to pass the House and it has to pass the Senate, and then the president has to sign it. What are your thoughts on this as truck drivers? Do you think that this is a bill that has legs, or this another bill that they're just tossing out there that's going nowhere? Let us know what you think in the comments, and I certainly would appreciate that. That's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. If you want to learn more about the freight broker business, I'll leave a free link in the description. It's my 5-video series, and I titled it How the Load Movement Process Works. It gives you a chance to come into the office with me and watch me on video as I move loads, talk to shippers and carriers. That way you can get a better understanding of how this business works before you come into it. And then if you're interested in learning more about how we go out and find the shippers that we do business with, I'll leave a free link right here. So until the next time, I wish you the very best in your life and business. See you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded.